Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Bierock. Welcome back to the Jaguar Football Podcast. Coach, if you look at the calendar, only a few more days of school, but this is where it really starts to get busy around campus as far as Seckman football goes. Good to see you.
Yeah, Carl, we're putting a bow tie on the school year, but as most teachers are packing up and seeing in 2.5 months, for me, for the football coaches, for the football players, this is when the work really starts and really starts to begin. So, here the last couple weeks of school, we've kind of been testing all of our progress in the weight room, and last week we had the opportunity to test our 1 rep maxes on the squat, bench, and power clean. This week we're testing, our speed on the field. We'll end up testing a player's 10-yard fly, which it's basically a running start, and then you run 10 yards. That kind of gives you a good measure of a player's top speed. 17, 18, 19 miles an hour. And then pro agility, that's one you see a lot, really at any combine, its ability to start and stop. You kind of start in the middle, you sprint 5 yards, sprint back 10 yards, and then sprint 5 yards. And then the last one that we'll do is everybody knows the 40-yard dash, right? So, that one's always kind of, the kids like to compare themselves. And we talked a little bit about 40s and stuff a lot last year. And, if you're running a 4.7 in high school, you're very fast. That's a very above average. And for me, on our football team, if you're running, if you're a skilled player running below a 5, we'll have a spot for you somewhere. And then, our linemen, if we can get you under 5.3, 5.4, that's typically where we want to be. So, that testing starting this week. Last week, we did all the testing in the weight room, and, very pleased with the results. Squat, bench, power clean. Our bench numbers are, everybody loves the bench, so our bench numbers always stay up pretty high. And I haven't broken it down completely, but I think we ended up with around 40 plus guys that are benching 225 or more. And 225 is kind of an arbitrary number, but if you lift weights, it's 2 plates on each side. It's what they lift at the NFL Combine. So it's just kind of a standard that we set, trying to get to that 225 benchmark. We have 44 guys, so that's always pretty solid to do. And I always try to get a team, to have between 35, 45 kids that could do that. And, with our squat going in the past 8-10 weeks, we did a lot to reset our squat and ultimately reset our squat depth. Hip mobility, the ability to bend, was a huge point of emphasis. So, we did in the rack, we actually put a strap down there and we made everybody squat to the same depth. So it didn't matter if you were 5'4", or really if you were the guy that's 6'4" on our team, everybody was squatting down to the same depth. So while that reset, our ability to squat low, it also kind of lowers the amount of big squat numbers that you would normally see, just because, when you're squatting lower, it's harder to do that with really heavy weight. But our squat numbers still stay pretty solid, and I was very happy with them. And then ultimately what I'm most happy with and where we put the most emphasis and where we really had a team need was building power. We've always been a strong team. We've always had good weight room strength. Now we needed to build power and mobility and speed with it. And, when you're in the weight room, one of the main ways you measure that is through the power clean. And we actually ended up with, like I said, I need to get through it officially, but 33 or 34 guys with power cleans of 225 or more, which is very good. It's a team record. Last year, I think the most I've had is a little bit over 25, so around 27, 28. So, we kind of set the record as far as our team is concerned going into the summer with the most 225 cleans or more. And then really 225 clean is good. Okay, great, I guess you could say. And then what I kind of consider a 250-pound clean to be pretty elite and very high level, above average. And we ended up with 13 or 14 of those this semester, and a previous team high was at 11. So, it was a point of emphasis for us all off season, talking about building power and hip mobility. And it was good to see the kids kind of respond and then obviously put the work in, and then we have the results line up. So, it was overall a very good week of testing that leads us right into the summer.
Yeah, Coach, it sounds like the progression. You wanted the players to do something in the off season, and you talked about track and wrestling, and track in
Mm-hmm.
particular. You want them to just get faster. They don't have to be setting records, but
Mm-hmm.
just pushing themselves to get faster and faster. Now you add in the component of the weight room. You have to like what you see, and I guess my question is: you had your meetings with the players the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Is this an opportunity maybe for them to maybe move into a different position or a different direction that maybe they didn't think about?
Yeah, well, when you get the progress in the weight room, for me, the most exciting part now is finally getting to move it out to the field, right? We we play football for about 3.5, 4 months. We lift weights for 12, and we've been in here for 7 or 8 months with no football. So I'm excited to see some of these guys that, with their newfound strength, and some guys have really, put some good weight on. Some guys have lost some bad weight and really transformed their bodies. So now getting the opportunity to put a football helmet on and kind of see what you can do when you get out on the field, they're excited, and I'm excited for that too. And yeah, ultimately for some guys, some of these body transformations are going to result in position changes, or different roles, than we had previously expected. Other guys with their transformations and their development have really put themselves in the conversation, right, to be varsity contributors this year, whether it be a young sophomore or seniors like we always talk about that come all the way up through the ranks. And now, we're getting very close to the time where the work that they put in can be shown not only to me, but the rest of the coaching staff.
Yeah, very exciting. Love this time of year. Everybody's record is clean, perfect, and you just a lot of
Yeah.
always excitement and optimism going into the off season. So it's good to
Yeah. I
hear.
mean, whether, Carl, whether you're coming off an 0-10 season, a 4-6, or, for us, a 7-4, and the success you've had the last 5 years, it doesn't. If you're a program that can't be excited or have some anticipation about, what's coming here over the next 5 months, then it's going to be a long 5 months. You're in trouble. So, for me, I'm excited. The anticipation, ready to get going. I know my coaches are, and then ultimately through all my conversations, the players are as well. And this senior class, really looking to make, kind of their stamp, and maybe the things that they felt like we felt short of last year. They want to work to correct those, and I'm excited to be here to help facilitate it for sure.
Yeah, can't wait. I mean, game week 1 will be here before you know it. And Coach, just real quick housekeeping. You mentioned in your weekly email, you talked about getting the physicals and getting that uploaded. I
Yeah.
thought we'd just shoot that reminder off here.
Yeah, no, it's a great time. We've kind of gone through a few different systems here. If your kid started out as a freshman, they had to turn in a paper copy. If your kid was a freshman and is now a senior, okay, we're on our third different way of doing this, right? So when your kid was a freshman, they had to turn in a paper copy. And then we switched to, oh, shoot, what was it called? Privet. And we've been doing Privet the last 2 years, okay, where you uploaded it, okay? Well, now, evidently we have found a better system, and it's called Final Forms, excuse me. So now you have to create your own profile, and Privet is no more. Now you take your Final Form profile, and this is where we would upload, the physical form, all the necessary documents, sign everything, and this is one of those things. And Carl, you work in business too. You work in business. When something comes right down from the top, you're just in charge of getting it out to everybody else. So,
Yeah.
Final Forms. Somebody that makes more money than me told me that's what we're using. So I need to get everybody signed up as much as possible. Even if you don't have that physical yet, let's create your profile so I know you're in there. And then when your player gets that physical, we can upload it, and we're ready to go. Because, all that has to be done before August 10th.
Yeah, and,
So,
and just I did it a couple weeks ago. The turnaround for having it submitted and approved was within 48 hours. So I mean, it's a very simple and straightforward process.
yeah, and you would think, me having a kid on the team, I would know a little bit more about it, but I made my wife do it. So
Yeah, trust me,
I
what
I only know
easy.
what's on the coach's side. So I don't know what you've seen, Carl, but yeah, I have not gotten any complaints, and My wife didn't complain to me about it either. It seems fairly straightforward, fairly simple. But if anybody has any questions about it, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Linda Ellman in the athletic office.
Perfect. Perfect. And Coach, this time of year is very exciting, not only for the Seckman community, but also those that follow the NFL. A lot of the teams last week, or all the teams for that matter, released their schedules, and the social media departments went crazy with the schedule release videos. Some I thought were a little bit more well produced than others, but it's
Right.
always fun to see that. On the flip side, you have the college recruiting, and it seems like that is going nonstop as well. The carousel continues to spin
Right.
365 24/7. Wanted to get your thoughts about what's going on this offseason and just in college ranks in general.
Yeah, this is a busy time. College recruiting always a very hot topic. You know, a lot of people, a lot of players have the dream of going on and playing college football. And anytime something like that happens and a lot of money gets involved, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And ultimately, I'm hoping here we could talk about a few different things to kind of clear up. If your son's coming to Seckman High School, what are their opportunities? To play college ball, and how can we help them get to the next level? We've done that plenty of times, and even since I've been here, we've sent 10 plus guys, you know, to play college football, and all the way from the NAIA level all the way up to Division One. And it's just if a parent or a player or has had an older player go through it before, everything's just so different now. So yeah, Carl, do you have any specific questions or where about this process or?
Yeah, well, I think about, I know college football is getting ramped up, but I
Mhm.
remember over the winter there was a story. I want to say it was the University of Tennessee women's basketball team pretty much lost their entire team due to transfer portal. And,
Right.
we even talked about it, I think, in one of the podcasts here a couple weeks back about the transfer portal, and maybe a new coach comes in, or maybe someone thinks that they're, maybe after getting on campus, that's not the right fit.
Hmm.
How does that impact either a team, in your opinion, and then B, keeping the coach around long enough to build some kind of community and longevity?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the transfer portal, NIL, it's basically changed really everything. Whereas before, when a player was picking a school, that's where they had to go. Hey, so they wanted to go Division One. That was their dream. That was their hope. If they went somewhere, they were basically locked in for 4 years. If you wanted to transfer, then you had to sit out a year. So it's really changed a lot of things, and it's basically what it's done is change the college football, any college sport into a farming system with different levels, and ultimately that top level is Division One SEC. Are there high school players that the SEC, Mizzou, Alabama, Ole Miss, those schools like that are still recruiting high school players? Yes, but they are recruiting the 1% of the 1%, right? These are people that, quite honestly, it's God given. It was decided in the womb. Their physical abilities, their physical traits. Now, did they have to have the focus and everything to get there? Yes, of course. When I think of a couple guys that we have here at Seckman that I've been around, that are at, the upper end of Division One. You're talking, for us, former football player Noah Isaiah. Not only did he have the physical tools to do it, but he had the almost, I don't want to say psychopathic, but the psychopathic focus and drive to get it done. I mean, every detail of his life revolved around being the best athlete he could be, no matter what he was putting in his body, no matter what weights he was lifting, and then ultimately when he found his passion for throwing, how can I get better at throwing? And it dominated every detail of his life. And he started out at Arkansas State. He threw really well. What happens when you throw really well? You get bumped up. We talked about the farm system, right? And now he's at Nebraska. Baseball player here just last year, Ryan Bradford. Originally was signed to a Division One baseball team. That didn't work out. The college pulled his offer, and okay, so he kind of took a step back, went and played junior college. All he did this past weekend was set the record for most home runs in junior college baseball history in a season. I think he's at like 43 or 44. And guess who came calling? Now TCU came calling. So, he kind of started his rank down here. And really, Ryan Bradford, another guy, I never got to work with him, but I just watching him in the hallways, another guy with just this almost, obviously had the physical traits, but just the focus on what he was doing in every detail of his life, basically getting him to this point. So, that's really what it takes, to get to that top level. And not everybody starts there, right? And so ultimately, we have a lot of college coaches, all different levels come through here. NIA, Division III, Division II, lower level Division I, like your CMOs. And then, then we have Missouri State, who's now Division I FBS, but they're Conference USA, right? And then the next step up above that is you would consider your Big Ten and your SEC schools. So, it's basically a farming system. So if you're not entering in at the top, and most people are not, it's just not a reality for a lot of the athletes in Jefferson County, unless your parents were both also Division I athletes. So then how does that work? Okay, well now, maybe right now you're a Division II athlete. So we get a school like McKendree in here. They're in the GLVC. We base basically almost every school in the GLVC. It's Division II, but it's like just a little bit bottom half of Division II, right? When you think of Division II schools in Missouri, because the upper echelon, that's going to be that'll be Missouri Western, that'll be Central Missouri, Northwest Missouri State. So anyway, talking to McKendree coaches that are in Division II, even, I'm like, well, how much really high school are you recruiting? Well, they're basically trying to build relationships with high school kids, knowing that they may not even end up going there originally, right? Where is McKendree pulling most of their guys from? Well, they're looking up. So maybe if there's a guy at Northwest Missouri State that hasn't been playing much, or Central Missouri that hasn't been playing much, or maybe there's even a guy at SEMO that hasn't been playing much and wants an opportunity to play. Well, he might fall down to McKendree, right? And that's kind of where they're getting their guys. Well, then if they're McKendree and they're in the middle, okay, well now, if you're a Division III, let's say you're at MOBAP and you're an all-conference offensive lineman at MOBAP, the chances that you're coming back to Division III next year are very low. You're actually going to end up probably getting offers from McKendree, right? So it's just the farming system. And even talking to the Missouri State coach, they're in Conference USA, and talking about, well, hey, what are you returning? Where are you guys pulling a lot of your guys from? Well, we're pulling them. If somebody's all conference at the Division II level, they're most likely getting pulled up to Conference USA. Or, hey, let's say there's a guy at, in the SEC, but he's third on the depth chart. He might come down to Missouri State. So it's really interesting to see. And quite honestly, a lot of times these high school athletes are the ones that kind of get stuck in the middle. So, ultimately it's really about trying to find the best place, and not being so concerned about where you start. Maybe you do have to start at a Missouri Baptist. Well, guess what? If you go to Missouri Baptist, a Division III school, which is a great school, great program, they have brand new coaching staff. All right, a lot of excitement around the program. Hey, you go to MOBAP, you show out, somebody else is going to come calling, right? Okay, hey, I'm at a Division II school in the GLVC, and I'm all conference. I'm doing this, that, the other. I can almost guarantee you SEMO is going to be calling, right? Oh, hey, I go to SEMO and I dominate. Missouri State's going to be calling. Oh, hey, I go to Missouri State. I'm all conference. I guarantee you Eli Drinkowitz is going to find their way into your email box. So it's just everything's basically changed. So, being recruited D1, is not the most realistic possibility for a lot of guys, unless you're basically the 1% of the 1%. But there is opportunity out there to work your way up, and that's honestly the reality for a lot of our athletes here at Segment.
Yeah, coach, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't really think about it that way, but it's just if I understand correctly, it's all about, just getting those opportunities, maybe putting tape together
Yeah.
and really looking at this, I thought about when I was in college, graduating and then starting my career.
Hmm.
Sounds like for these folks that are in the programs right now, it's like their career starts now after high
Right.
school and trying to, get that NIL money and, elevate themselves into a, bigger stage.
Yeah, and if you want to be a college athlete, Carl, it basically, it would be great to have that kind of focus going into your freshman year, but I mean, freshmen don't know what they don't know yet. But if you don't have that intensity, that laser focus going into your sophomore year, that you want to be a college athlete and you don't make really an everyday commitment to it, whether it's your nutrition, whether it's your recovery, whether it's the actual skill of your sport, whether it's what you're doing in the weight room and your speed, you know, you're not going to start as high as you would like, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, with the NIL money, a lot of that too is very much up at the upper echelon, right, of where these guys are at. But certainly, it can come to a lot of guys in the middle too. I know, it's really trickling down as far as the money is concerned from like schools like SEMO, and then Division II schools with a little bit less opportunity could also help with that. But yeah, any athlete that really wants to take serious being a college athlete, it definitely starts, when you're here at Seckman High School. And when you're at Seckman High School, that opportunity is here. It's proven by the guys that we've sent off. It's proven by, the number of schools that come through here looking for athletes. Since I've been here, we've probably had, I'm not, 25 to 30 different schools come through here. The same, 10 to 15 on a regular basis. I have a lot of connections with a lot of coaches, um, and ultimately, that opportunity to build relationships with these colleges and these college coaches are here for our athletes. And it's kind of frustrating for me sometimes because you're like, well, if you don't go to this school, you're not going to get the opportunity. Well, that's crap. That's not true. And I'm not going to go out on Facebook and say that. I guess I could say it on my podcast, though. How about that?
Yeah.
These folks are liars. Come to Seckman High School, get recruited. We've got plenty of examples of kids having success at the next level. And just from talking to college coaches, once you get to whatever level you start at, hey, you start at Division III, you think you're a Division II player, well, go out and show it. Move on up. Hey, you think you got under recruited and now you're at Division II, go out and show it. Move on up. And that's really what's changed the game, is the opportunity to move up and down for these athletes. And I'm excited and I enjoyed, providing that experience to our players. Now, last 2 years, we haven't sent anybody to play college football, not for lack of ability. How about this, Carl? It's okay to not play college sports.
Yeah.
It's college football takes a toll on your body. It is, once again, it is an everyday full-time commitment, and it's not something. If it's not something that you love and want to commit to, it's okay. It's okay to take your last snap of football and in a Jaguar football helmet and go on and do something else. Um, but ultimately, if a player wants to keep playing, those opportunities are here, and we can provide them to them. And just the last 2 years, you think of some of the players that we've had, the Dom Lagrassos, the Dylan Lappies, a few of our linemen, that opportunity's been there. Just those guys have decided to kind of go on and do the next thing. And, I'm not here to judge them for it, and I support them in whatever they want. Now, going into this year, we have a handful of seniors that have some interest, and, we're going to see how their senior years play out. And once it plays out, talk to my guys all the time, too. They're not going to get recruited like some of the guys you see on Twitter, right? As far as, the letters in the mail all the time and things like that. A lot of it's going to come after senior year. We get an opportunity to build tape, reach out to coaches. Those coaches come through here, and that's really when, we can get our kids noticed and ready to go.
Coach, really appreciate you sharing your insight there, because it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, you're given the opportunity, make the best of it. And if they decide to play at the next level, they have the solid foundation to do so. And so that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Well, that's kind of like, when a player decides to, go to a private school to play football, that's really one of the big selling points. Well, you come here, we'll get you recruited. Well, okay, CBC, yeah, why are all your kids getting recruited? Because they're 6'2" and 6'3", 250 pounds. Okay. Or think about a couple local ones in our area that don't like to tell the truth. You can get recruited wherever you go. And if you're good enough and, at Seckman High School, we're going to find you the opportunity for you to play at the next level.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And speaking of, giving them the opportunity, we have a couple camps that are going on and signups. Not only do we have the Junior Jaguar registration open, and also the high school registration piggybacks off the same website, we do have the Youth Seckman football camp that's coming up mid-June, June 16th and 17th. Hope to see everybody out there. Great 2 days of fun. And Coach, you really don't have to have any experience to do the football camp in particular.
No experience required. Just, drop the kids off for an hour and 15, maybe take a nap in your car, take a walk around the park, listen to the podcast a few times, and pick them up, and they'll have had a good time.
Excellent. We'll have the links to those registrations in the description of this podcast. And speaking of which, if you want to consume this, we are on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're also on Apple Music. You can download the audio version. We're also on Spotify. So, Coach, we are covered as far as the media distribution for this podcast. But
you can't ignore us, Carl.
That's right. We are nationwide. You look at some of the stats. You're very popular in the UK, Coach. So go figure.
Good.
So with that, we are coming up at the end of our podcast today. It always goes by and flies by fast. I imagine as we get deeper into, the off season here, the frequency of this podcast is going to increase, and then we'll of course go weekly. But wanted to give you the floor and have you take us out as we round out the school year.
Yeah, Carl, it's we kind of hit it at the beginning. And we'll hit it here at the end. It is football season at this point. We're going to be together as a team every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And ultimately, Carl, and I think I feel this way every time we get to this point of year, I have everybody in class, but basically in 6 different pockets, right? And I've been watching this guy work with this guy, and this group work with this group, and this work. Now I'm ready to get them all together and kind of watch how – I've had some guys really step up and be good leaders and good mentors in the weight room. And now I'm excited for them to kind of take their intensity, take their work, and rub it off on a different group. And just really get the whole group together and finally feel like we're moving towards next season. So I'm excited about that. I know the kids are. And, as always, this time of year, if anybody has any questions, it never stops. So feel free to reach out and roll Jags.
All right. Well said, Coach. And we appreciate your time today. And we thank everybody for watching. And we will catch everybody on the next one.
Thanks, Carl.